the new book, Phil, by our friend back here on the Rich Eisen Show on the Mercedes-Benz Vans phone line, the man who wrote this book, a fascinating tome. Joining us here on the Rich Eisen Show, none other than Alan Shipnuck. How you doing, Alan?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. Happy to be back.
Good. Glad to have you back. Are you in Tulsa right now? Are you there?
Yes, I'm on the grounds of Southern Hills Country Club, a very stately Golden Age design. It's going to be one hell of a venue for this tournament, and I'm excited to be here.
Well, let's get right into it, Alan. Your book, Phil, the rip-roaring and unauthorized biography of golf's most colorful superstar, is a fascinating read, man, and you just jump right into it by, collecting some of the best Phil stories from so many different people from the world of golf and also sports as well. I didn't, think that Tom Candiotti would be the first guy that you would quote have a Phil story to start the book, but obviously Phil has been there and done that. So what do you make of the fact that Phil is not there this week, Alan?
I mean, it's a bummer for all of us. We love watching Phil play the game, and last year's PGA was a transcendent performance and really put an exclamation point on an incredible career. And but the ground has shifted beneath his feet, and I think that Phil is just buying some time to figure out his next move. He's caught between two worlds with the PGA Tour and this new Saudi venture, and he's been heavily involved in the creation of the Saudi league, even as the tour has been this tremendous platform for him to build his brand and over the last 3 decades. And he went from a fan favorite to kind of a heel turn and a little bit of a bad guy, and I know that's got to be disorienting for Phil. So he just wasn't ready to return to public life and answer the hard questions and have to declare his allegiance to one tour or the other. So it's pretty clear that the Saudis and the PGA Tour are going to wind up in court, and the future of that is undetermined. And I think Phil just wants to be on the sidelines a bit longer and see how it's all going to play out. Well,
I don't know. I guess where to start is, because obviously the quote that is in your book that you published in the Fire Pit Collective a couple of months ago that led to your previous appearance here. Greg Norman came out last week and talked about sports washing. I mean, he treated what the Saudi government and everything in the real world that Phil talked about in stark honesty. He talked about it like, you got to move on, and he treated it like a missed 5-foot putt, Greg Norman. How come Phil's getting so much grief for stuff that Greg Norman appears to not?
Yeah, I mean, there is an element of hypocrisy in all this, because many players have gone over to Saudi Arabia over the last 5 years and taken money from the Saudis in appearance fees and then this European PGA Tour event that's played annually. And they've skated, there's a script. And if you stay on script, you're going to be okay, where you just say, I'm here to grow the game, and we're bringing golf to people who haven't seen it, and it's a great vehicle for bettering oneself, and I'm an athlete, not a politician. Everybody rolls their eyes. They know it's BS, and they're just there for the money. But if you stay on script, you can get away with it. Phil said the quiet parts out loud, and he was so blunt, and he was so callous in dismissing the Saudi atrocities. And he also was very, for him to admit, kind of these sneaky backroom dealings against his home tour, that was a big deal as well. So I think it was a double whammy of Phil being too honest, and the fact that he's really in some ways been subverting his home tour. That's why people are outraged. And let's face it, I mean, Phil Mickelson is a huge star. Like Lee Westwood in some ways has become the face of the Saudi Golf League, but he doesn't inspire emotion the way that Phil does. He's not a global figure. I mean, Phil has been one of the best golfers in the world for more than 3 decades. It is unparalleled longevity in any sport. And so what he says just carries more weight, and he's always been a lightning rod. He's always been polarizing, and this is just another controversy in a career that's been full of them.
So what is the future of it? You said that there's a court case coming up, and Phil's waiting to see how everything lands before he re-emerges. Is that the scoop?
Yeah, well, Yeah, I mean, it hasn't been filed yet, but the golfers like to call themselves independent contractors, but they're really not, because when you sign up as a member of the PGA Tour, which makes you eligible for all these humongous bonus programs and the best pension program in sports, if you want to play in a competing event on another tour that's opposite a PGA Tour event, you have to get permission from the tour. And there's always been a little bit of a dance where sometimes the tour will extract some promises like, okay, you can do that, but you have to play these tournaments over the next few years. And it's always been bothersome to the players, but they accept it because the rewards of tour membership are so great. A bunch of players applied for releases to go play the first Saudi event next month, and the tour took a very hard line and said no. And so now it's one of the big questions in the sport: who's going to break the blockade? Who's going to go over there and play anyway? And they will likely get suspended by the tour, and then there'll be a lawsuit on antitrust reasons. Can the PGA Tour really restrict these players, who are independent contractors in theory, from playing other tours? And that's why this is such an explosive issue in golf, because it can reshape the entire landscape of the professional game. And it could be a seismic shift in how each of these tours conducts their business. And so there is a heck of a lot at stake for the tours, their sponsors, the players, and every other stakeholder in the game. And so that's why the players have been so upset with Phil. It's not about morality. It's not about human rights. It's that he's doing things that could impact them business-wise. Like, he could be taking money out of their pocket, because if you're a tour member and this competing Saudi circuit becomes successful and it starts attracting, blue chip corporate sponsorship and TV contracts, that's money that's getting siphoned away from the PGA Tour. And now a person starts falling, you're playing for less money, and the superstars might benefit because those are the ones who are being courted by the Saudis. But if you're kind of a rank and file tour member, this could directly impact your livelihood. So the criticism that Phil came under from his colleagues, it wasn't really because they're upset that he's negotiating with these bad actors on the world stage. It's because it could affect their pocketbook.
Alan Shipnuck, the author of Phil, the rip-roaring and unauthorized biography of golf's most colorful superstar, calling into the Rich Eisen Show here. So who obviously we know how the Saudi league would be funded and how Greg Norman is at the forefront of it. Who's televising it? Like, where would we see it if it happens? Like, where would that happen?
Right now, nobody. They're scrambling to try and get TV and or streaming for this first event in June that's being played outside of London. And somebody may take them up on the offer, but that's a piece of the puzzle they haven't figured out. And the Saudis are playing the long game. They have unlimited resources, so it's been a little bit of a dumpster fire to start here. They haven't gotten the big name players they'd hoped. They haven't secured the TV. But the insidious thing about sports washing is that it works, because if they can just get this thing launched, all of a sudden you're going to have some B-list pro is going to go over there, and he's playing for $25 million while the competing PGA Tour event, the person's $8 million. And this is a guy you beat every week, and now all of a sudden he's going to win $4 million for 3 days of work. There's going to be a lot of established pros who decide they want to get in on that action. And so I think the Saudis know that if they can just get this circuit launched and maybe prevail in court, that in year 2 they're going to get bigger and better players, and in year 3 it'll just continue, because you can only express your moral outrage so many times, and then it gets tiresome and people tune you out. And that's why sports washing works, because people just at some point throw up their hands and say, okay, I guess the Saudis have now bought their way into professional golf, like they have Formula One, like they have the EPL, they have big time darts and snooker contests over there. Like, they will do anything they can to launder their reputation by bringing big time events, and it works. That's the problem. So they're not going away. I mean, they have unlimited resources and they have time on their side.
Well, it's affected the current state of golf already, in the fact that the reigning PGA champ, after one of the most endearing and exciting championships, is not there. I mean, again, I can't believe it's been a year when I just remember we were all coming out of a lot of quarantines and just seeing Phil being surrounded and Brooks Koepka being jostled with that surgically repaired knee by a bunch of patrons, to use the Masters phrase, just surrounding Phil with his big aviators and flashing the grin and the thumbs up, and he's not there. So what is the general sense of things at Southern Hills a couple days before the first ball flies?
Yeah, there's a void here. I mean, that really was a defining performance by Phil, and there's a sense of disbelief. Whether Phil was suspended or took a voluntary leave, it's pretty clear that's just semantics. I mean, the PGA Tour put him on ice, but it was now been 90 days since those first comments. 90 days has been the typical length of a serious PGA Tour suspension in the past. Even though they don't talk about these things publicly, it's like the Kremlin, but enough information is leaked out. We know how they handle their business. It would have been wildly excessive to suspend Phil for longer than that. He didn't break any laws. Now, he did violate some unwritten rules, and he did violate the player handbook, which says you can't work against the business interests of the tour. But ultimately, he's been squeaky clean from a tour standpoint. This is his first major offense. If Phil had wanted to play this PGA Championship, he would be here. Because the PGA of America is not the PGA Tour. They're different organizations. And the PGA of America, which runs the tournament, does not have to abide by anything the tour says. Phil's the defending champ. He's exempt into the field. They would never have barred him, the PGA of America, from playing in their own tournament. And it would have been a ratings bonanza, his return to the public domain. So I think this was Phil's choice, and I think it tells you that he's just not ready to face the tough questions. He's not ready to declare his allegiance, and he's still kind of game planning the best way to return to public life.
Any communication between you and Phil in the last 90 days, Alan?
After the excerpt dropped, he sent me a text in which he expressed his displeasure, and I wrote him back. He didn't respond, and then subsequently went back to him. The text never went through, and talking to other people, theirs aren't going through, so it's pretty clear he changed his number. But I did send him a copy of the book weeks ago with a handwritten note, and I wanted him to see what was in it before the public, and if he was worried about coming back this week in case there was going to be any other earthquakes, I wanted him to see it as a very fair and balanced book. It was actually written with a good amount of affection because I've always enjoyed writing about Phil and being in his, watching him do his thing and being in his orbit. And so, and I said that in my note to him. I have not gotten a critique on the book from him yet, so that may be forthcoming. But he's in San Diego. He's playing golf every day. I've had people sending me photos and videos of him at Rancho Santa Fe Golf Club and the Bridges and the Farms, like all these private courses in the San Diego area. And his swing looks good. It looks like he's put on a little bit of weight, which is fine. He's got a little bit of a beard, but he's coming back to the game. But that doesn't mean he's ready to return to public life. So it's going to be fascinating, his next move. And, there's some real milestones. The first is the Saudi event in early June. The week after is the U.S. Open, which we all know is, an annual psychodrama for Phil. It's the missing piece of the career Grand Slam. And he was out of the field until he won the PGA Championship. Now he has a 5-year exemption to try and get that last crown jewel, right? And if he skips the U.S. Open when he's exempt into the field, that this self-imposed exile is serious. But again, I think right now he's just buying time, and he's waiting to see how things are going to play out with the Saudis, and he's waiting to see if other players are going to be the first one out of the bunker, or to try and test the tour's resolve. And there's just the landscape is changing rapidly, and Phil's caught in the middle of all of it, and he's just buying himself some more time.
Well, I guess one of the ways, Alan, to change the narrative, if you are running the PGA Championship, is to put Tiger, McIlroy, and Spieth together right out of the box to start things off on Thursday and have them play together for 2 days. How do you think Phil's going to look at that and let that sink in over the next couple of days, do you think?
Yeah, I'm sure there'll be some FOMO. he loves the big stage. He's a showman, and he thrives on the energy of the crowd. And nobody's signed more autographs than Phil Mickelson over the last 3 decades. So he likes to feel that love, and it's gonna. I think it's gonna be very bittersweet for him. But it's just Phil has he's created this mess with his, the secret dealings with the Saudis, and now it's just gonna have to play out. So. But yeah, I'm sure it's going to be hard for him not to be here. And it's honestly a great golf course for him. The way they've set it up with instead of long, tangly rough around the greens, it's shaved down swales, and you really need a lot of touch and imagination and short game talent. And it would have been great to watch Phil, try and navigate this course. And so, yeah, if he tunes in and he sees those 3 guys out there, knowing that he probably should have been in that group, but it's going to be very bittersweet for him.
Well, congrats on your book. Again, just as an example of you pointing out that it was written with a level of endearment. Just that first chapter, I don't want to give too much away, with you just unloading everybody's favorite Phil story. I was waiting for it to turn at some point to the stories of a guy with a great sense of humor and then a huge heart, talking to people who's, dealing with cancer and things like that. Just a story where he would be an a-hole, and it doesn't happen. Like you don't have it in there,
Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean, as I said, like my goal was always to write a really fair, balanced book, and because of some of the, there's been all this energy around the excerpts and some of the juicy bits. I mean, I enjoyed writing about Phil's virtues, and he's done a lot of great things in his life, and he's touched a lot of people, and that's all in the book too. And it was not my intention or my job to legislate how people should feel about Phil. I just tried to present as comprehensively as I could this really big, complicated life, and people will take from it what they will. And I try to stay out of the way of the story. But yeah, I'm glad you picked up on that, because people have said, is this a takedown of Phil? It was never intended to be that. And some of the blowback and some of these repercussions that have come out of the things he told me, I knew it was going to provoke controversy. I never imagined it would send him into exile. And Phil talked his way out of many controversies in the past, and I assumed he would do the same thing. But I think he wildly underestimated the emotion around Saudi Arabia, which did supply 15 of the 19 9/11 hijackers, and they did assassinate a Washington Post reporter who was a resident of the United States. And Phil thought he was being a cagey businessman and was engaging in these hardball negotiations, but I don't think he estimated. Well, I know he didn't, that the emotional reaction that he was in league with the Saudis, and so he made some fundamental miscalculations. But there is a road back for Phil. I mean, Tiger Woods has never been more beloved than he is at this moment, despite his scandals. And Phil can feel that love again as well. But what he decides on the Saudi question is going to be fundamental, because if he goes all in with them after all the things he says and us knowing his true feelings, it's going to be hard for a lot of golf fans to forgive him. And so that's why I think he's taking a little extra time to make that decision, because it's really going to define this last act of his career.
Alan, thanks for the time. Enjoy the walk there. It's Southern Hills, and let's have you back on soon as this develops. Thank you.
Yes, thanks for having me. Always a great conversation, Rich.
Thank you. Right back at you. That's Alan Shipnuck, the author, right here on the Rich Eisen Show. Hey, you watched all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Watch more right here